Hello, everyone, and welcome to this pre-conference session of AAC in the Cloud. We're really excited to have you here. Today, our presenters are Donna McNear and Kelly Fonner, and they will be presenting Pretend Play Power, integrating literacy modalities and tools. So we'll turn things over to them.
Well, thanks, Melissa, for having us. I'm going to grab the screen here and share our presentation. You have access to our slides. And Donna and I are really excited to bring this topic to AAC in the Cloud. We are, as educators, as teachers, we have both taught in early childhood settings. We'll give you a little bit more information on our backgrounds here, but we're going to be talking today about using pretend play as a way to integrate literacy and assistive technology modalities, and of course, communication here at AAC in the Cloud. My name's Kelly Fonner. I do training and consulting for educational and assistive technologies. I am a special education teacher online. I have a couple kids that I work directly with literacy strategies, which are students that have complex learning needs. But I mostly am a consultant in literacy and communication in the classroom. Donna?
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you, Melissa, for your introduction. It's great to be part of AAC in the Cloud. And as everyone said, I'm Donna McNear. I live in Cambridge, Minnesota, and I'm a longtime educator for children who are blind and visually impaired. I'm also an orientation and mobility specialist. And for many years now, I've been a consultant. I was a teacher and O&M specialist for many years. And now I've kind of stepped away from working in schools, and I do mostly professional development. And I just want to add that Kelly and I, we are really excited about this topic. And Kelly and I have been presenting together for many years on topics we get really excited about. And this is one of them. We like to do deep dives into our content by looking at what all kids do, what kids with special needs do, and we combine our backgrounds and talk about all kids with special needs.
You also get introduced to our grandchildren during this session because we've used some videos of them and what we do in play and pretend play and literacy with those kiddos. So you know the family by the time we're done with this session. Our learning objectives for this session are to make sure that we're covering content for you that helps you to evaluate the potential of literacy using current play activities in children's own environment. We're not talking about pull-out therapy. We're looking at you being able to identify at least 3 accommodations necessary to include students who have high needs in pretend play, and especially in activities with their same age peers. And also to be able to name strategies to incorporate literacy activities within routines. You'll get more than 3, but we have to put a number on that for purposes. So I'm going to turn it to Donna to get our agenda started.
Thanks, Kelly. We've organized our content into 4 areas. We're first going to share information about just why pay attention and focus on pretend play. How are we going to inform our practice, no matter what your practice is as a person who works with students with disabilities, or if you're a parent or have another role. We're going to look at teaching strategies. We're going to look at access, adapting, and participating in pretend play, and some ideas about implementation. So we're beginning with informing our practice. So Kelly and I like to talk about mindsets and shifting, because we're always relearning, reforming, shifting what we know and how do we apply it today. So with pretend play, we're shifting from viewing pretend play as a leisure activity 2, thinking through pretend play as a learning opportunity. So we've really refocused how we think about play with children and teaching. And we really like this quote from Alfred Donaldson, who's a play researcher. And he says, children learn as they play. Most importantly, in play, children learn how to learn. So we're pretty passionate about learning and play and bringing this to the forefront. So I like to look at exactly what is it we're talking about, and what is pretend play. So we just want to make sure we're on the same page. And so I want to share with you that when you look up information and read about pretend play, it's also known as dramatic play, imaginative play, role playing, and make-believe. And so just some examples of what pretend play actually can be. So it can be using an object to represent something else. It can be an action with realistic looking items. It can be actions related to a similar routine. It can be playing as if something or someone is real. It can be dress up and role playing and manipulation of ideas and emotions. It can be acting out stories. And Kelly, my bar is covering those last 2 items.
And it can also be imitation and imaginary play for like superheroes and other characters.
Okay, great. Thank you. So
our key ideas that we're going to be talking about here is pretend play is a central component of child development. And as Donna said, it's how children learn. We're going to be talking about engaging in pretend play to improve children's executive functioning. Pretend play can be time to experiment. It can be time to trial and develop the use of assistive technologies that kind of push into activities that are already happening. And pretend play behaviors are likely to develop additively. So, you know, from kind of that least to most psychologically complex to going through this order that Donna found in some of the research she was doing. Object substitution, attribution of pretend properties, social interactions with pretend, role enactment, and then pretend related meta communication. So in fact, I just had this experience last night with my granddaughter where our pretend play while we were at a restaurant was in the theme of repeat what I say. And then she went down different avenues of characters as she was saying things. Donna.
Yes, thanks, Cal. So we always want to dive into a little bit of the research so that we're grounded in what's going on. But before I do that, I want to just explain the photo. And like Kelly said, our grandkids are going to be in some of the content. So this photo is my younger grandchildren. We call them the littles. It's Max and Lily, and they're twins. And here they are out in their yard, pretend play, really using that that meta communication, that pretense, because they are, I captured them, they are really negotiating and talking to each other about who's going to do what in this whole pretend play scenario. So you can see they're very serious about this conversation. And, you know, they've got dolls, they've got toys. Lily's got her bags with her stuff in it. And they spend a lot of time in pretend play. And it really highlights for me how much learning does occur in pretend play. So just the research themes, when you look up what's going on with pretend play, it's that language and communication. That's so important for all our children, especially our children with special learning needs. And it's about that expressing ideas. And so in the area of literacy, that's really important about pretend play is just telling stories and acting out books and themes, making them come alive. It's contextualizing letters, words, and numbers and giving them meaning within pretend play. And it's also then vocabulary expansion. It's really good to expand what kids are saying, trying to say, attempting to say, and so forth. And then that whole social emotional piece is huge in pretend play, because kids get to act out not only positive, but negative emotions. So it doesn't have to be real. A lot of self-regulation. They can show empathy and learn, and relationship skills with others. And Kelly, I've tried moving my bar and I can't seem to get it, so I can't see the bottom.
That's all right. So, and then the fourth area that comes up in research is the cognitive area, where we use pretend play as a way of problem solving and creating ideas. And I think one of the things that overall goes across all of these areas is the idea that this is not about adults directing, right? These are the things that come out when children are the directors. Now, some of our students and our children need more support than others, but that doesn't mean that we need to direct and, kind of manipulate the whole situation. We need to set things up and let things play out to the degree and the pacing that our children set for us. So that idea, go ahead, Donna.
Oh, that's okay. Thanks. I got rid of the bar finally. So when do we pretend play? And here we have Lily as a young toddler, and she's got her babies sitting on the floor around her in this context. So it's really important to examine at what age does pretend play start, and because we have a tendency, I think, not to realize how early this can be part of our teaching with young children. So for example, we think about how early do kids put a rectangle object to their ear now, which is what is today's phone. And it's really early. And Kelly, didn't we say that some a mom said like 9 months, or do you recall?
I think it was prior to a year that was found.
Right. So here's what I want to share with you. So what is our challenge around age and when to encourage pretend play? So like many things, in literacy and communication, sometimes people have they want to wait. For example, I read in some literature this quote, "When they are capable, then we start." And we know that doesn't work for us working with kids with disabilities, with complex learning needs, with neurodiversity stuff going on. So that's our challenge as educators and pushing out pretend play is to do it when they're young and not wait.
And that's our message. It's never too early to start. And so we want to, give you some scenarios of different kinds of materials and different types of activities that, literacy can be integrated into pretend play when you do things like having manipulatives that go along with the books. Even though some of our students and children might use those as items to mouth, it still is a component of the what's going on in the activity. And when we mean it's never too early, we practice what we preach. This is me with Lola 4 years ago, and just a little bit of what she loved at the time, and also starting to use play and literacy to be observational about the child that you're working with. So I'm not just about reading the book to her, but I'm looking at where does she look? What does she react to? What does she pay attention to? And she's not any more than 6 months at this age. Tiger, el tigre. Tiger. You know, and I think that we forget how much time things take, you know, and the idea of giving children their time and following their lead. That it's not just about, I've got to get to the end of this book within 5 minutes, but to give her the time to look at all of the things that are there and to begin to express herself and enjoy. So Donna takes us into teaching strategies.
Yeah. Thanks, Cal. I just want to comment. I love that video, and from you know, my background of vision. I mean, it's just such a great example. It's a book, high contrast, simple things on the page. You're holding it within range of her near vision. It's just all such great stuff, Cal. And then and Lola's so active, and she's so engaged with looking, and it's very cool. So, okay, moving on to some teaching strategies now. So we're going to look at early literacy and pretend play. And when we think about early literacy, we think about books, we think about rhymes, songs, poems, because that captures the rhythm of language. That's so important in early communication. And we want to think about using in pretend play materials of their future. And I really, like, Kelly has really gotten me into thinking about the tools of their future, the technology of their future. So we integrate them. Maybe we don't expect them to use maybe alternative materials, tools, and technology, or different, but we put them in their environment. We use them in their environment, and we use them in pretend play. So we're going to watch a little video clip to just kind of get our heads into this a little bit about what does it look like in action, early literacy in pretend play. So we're going to look at all kids, and it's a video of my grandkids doing the drama of from the book Going on a Bear Hunt. So you won't see the book in this, but you'll just see them acting it out. So when you watch this, I want you to just watch it with what are all kids doing. And if you were to be doing this with a child with that you know who has special needs or access or materials that are different than typical print materials, just be thinking about that. So we're just going to watch it, Cal. We're going on a bear hunt. It's on. And what are we going through first? Are we going through the grass? Swishy swashy, swishy swashy. What are we going through next? What are we going through? The forest? Stumble trip, stumble trip. What are we going through next? The snowstorm, woo woo. Tiptoe, tiptoe, tiptoe. Oh no! Stumble trip, stumble trip. Squishy squashy. It's up there. Let's go back home and close the door.
It's right there.
Oh, that's, you changed your home?
Yeah. It's again.
and you gonna shut the door?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to say I'm hungry. Yeah. I have some food in it.
Okay. So this always makes me laugh. I mean, there's so much to talk about here, but I just want to mention on the part of the teacher, I had to know that book, right? And remember the words and put them into action. And then always with kids, and it's just a great example here of flexibility, because they changed their mind about where home was. And so you just, have to go with that negotiation, if you will, of play when you insert yourself in it. You just have to, go with the example. But when we look at all kids and we look at the materials here and the access and so forth, I mean, I just examine it. If I were to be doing this play scenario with a child who is blind, I would have to plan and think through a lot of things. So if you're working with a child with limited mobility or using AAC, then it would be more planning and thinking through. But this is just a great example of what pretend play can be all about in terms of a literacy context. So when we think about some play considerations in using literacy and pretend play, and we have some photos to illustrate. I like the tent one with a computer. So that is really fun for kids. So just like we saw in the video of Lily and Max with going on a bear hunt, we bring prior knowledge to pretend play. And I think that's really important. And so, for example, what I want to share with you is when I begin pretend play, maybe with a child who's new to me, and I'm doing play with a child for the first time, I frequently do eating or kitchen or something, because most kids have some prior knowledge around eating and meals and what that's all about. And so that's just really an important part of pretend play. And then bringing in those personal experiences. So who are their family members? Who do they live with? Do they have pets? What is their day like? Bringing in names and really that personal and individualized content for each student to make it more real and engaging the children with that. And then bringing in literacy materials for reading and writing. And Kelly's going to talk a bit about the whole writing part of it, and the literacy tools. So like the literacy tool here of the children using a computer in the tent is one I really like. So. And here is just a photo of children engaged in pretend play around doctor, which a lot of children do, and a lot of children with special needs have a lot of prior knowledge with medical stuff. And so it's a great way, playing doctor is a great way to engage kids in pretend play. And just to get you thinking about including literacy, and if we think of the 4 areas of literacy, of reading, writing, speaking, and listening, I just have that photo, and then the kids are around in different positions, and I just kind of imagined what they were. So for example, if I wanted to structure more and around literacy, I could bring in to the doctor, the arrow pointing, who I think is the doctor, taking notes on a computer, because that's what doctors do now. I pretend on the right that there's a therapist using a tool to record data. And if that was that student's tool of their future, I would bring that in. I like a nurse assistant below recording data too, writing it. And so I bring in the tools for pretend play with writing. And then on the left-hand side at the bottom, I imagined a nurse speaking the data and talking and using expressive communication and pretend play. And then I imagined there's a friend taking notes on paper and more with written communication. So this is just to spur your ideas of how to be intentional and bring in literacy into pretend play in a classroom with a group of children where maybe only one child might be your own student.
I love the idea of the friend taking the notes. That's great. As Donna said, we don't want to just put all of literacy into the book reading component, but to encourage that writing piece. For many of our students, writing makes reading concrete. And so writing certainly can be a big part of pretend play. So you see just here in this image, somebody on the phone, little girl on the phone, taking notes. And you see that she's probably seen that before, even though the telephone is probably very foreign to her world at this point. But we can support play through writing, where we are helping kids see how writing happens for authentic purposes, that we look at providing them opportunities to use the tools, as Donna talked about earlier. The tools are what she refers to wonderfully as the mark makers of their future. And also starting to create that atmosphere about composing stories and other types of writing like poems, lists. We do a lot of writing and lists with early emergent communicators. So, we're really focusing on children writing on their own in whatever way. And if you need ways of figuring out how can kids write, we've done a session in a prior AAC in the Cloud on looking at alternative pencils, and other people have done those sessions as well. So making sure that writing materials are around the room in each of your play centers, that it's not just a center unto itself, right? And figure out, like Donna did with the play scenario around the doctor's office or around the operation room, about how you can link writing to the theme of play. So here are some nice examples that we've taken some of these examples from the Florida Reach Project. Looking at writing as a part of checking in to a station or a different centers. Looking at writing in your kitchen area. So you have somebody that is taking the orders. In the lower corner, that's how, again, writing with my granddaughter, where she would be naming things that she wanted to play with, and we're writing the words and coloring and putting letters on different things. I use so many Post-it notes, I can't even begin to mention how many Post-it notes are always around me when we are playing. So things like checking into the office, working in stores, signing up for turn taking. I know some people that have used writing to check into different play areas in the classroom, as well as looking at writing during construction. We can read books about construction and then go and act that out. So we can design. I love this picture in the lower right-hand corner, which is people labeling the animals that are at the zoo, or that scene that they're doing, or labeling the kinds of things that they are creating, putting names on buildings as you're, using your building blocks and your Duplo blocks and all those others. You'll hear people refer to some of this writing as parallel writing, where we might not be writing together, but we're writing side by side. So this is actually some pictures that were sent to me by a teacher in Donors Choose. So as they were writing their thank yous, everybody had thank yous, and they had the opportunity to write an individual thank you, or to write on the fourth picture is a group poster that was being sent to the person that had sponsored something that classroom had asked for in Donors Choose. So, you have kids that you need to provide these kinds of opportunities in individual, in small group, and in large group scenarios. Other opportunities where kids are doing dramatic play are out at recess. So whether they are creating treasure maps, whether they are playing together in the sandbox, they can be doing some of that labeling. They can be using the chalk on the sidewalk to do chalk drawings as a part of their pretend play. I have kids that will mark off different zones and talk about like a whole, an obstacle course that they're creating, and they've got some idea in their head about this part is the water and this part is the mountain we go over, and they represent that in their drawings. And then another colleague that Donna and I work with often is Scott Marfilius, and Scott is always talking about capturing writing, making sure that in our day and age of things being electronic, where everybody's got a phone at their side taking a picture of what's going on, that writing is captured. It's not just something that's put in an email or a text message and off it goes, but that we can capture it. And one of the ways that we can capture it electronically is to take pictures of it. So here are some examples with children with child-based cameras as well as pretend cameras, taking pictures within different play scenarios or writing activities that they've done. So I always think that's a nice way for kids to capture their work play.
Okay,
Donna.
thank you. Yeah, thank you, Kelly. We're going to move forward with focusing on a little bit more of access to pretend play, adapting, and participation, just to give you some examples to get you thinking about your own contexts. And so in terms of access, adapt, and participate, just when you're thinking about your own students, you want to examine the materials you're going to use, the tools you're going to use, and the technology. And in this photo is an adapted and accessible menu that a mom and I created when we were doing pretend play routines for her son around some letter identification in Braille. And we did it around a restaurant because they had just spent a weekend at a hotel and her son really liked the restaurant. And so I was doing a little bit of tutoring with Braille identification of letters. And so being the player I am, I wanted to create a pretend play scenario about Braille letter identification. So we created this menu in Braille, and it was a hit. He had no idea he was doing a literacy lesson on letters in Braille. He just was having a blast getting into the play routine of being in a restaurant. So integrating literacy and pretend play takes planning, and here's just a photo of a family that are friends of mine. This is the mom, Heather, with her two children, Evie and Ethan, who are blind. And they're much older now, I just will add. And at any rate, when we think about integrating, especially the tools of their future, if we think about integrating letters, numbers, words, and then books, and what we call in my field their primary reading modality, or so whatever materials and tools your students have for reading and writing, that's where it takes that planning to integrate their primary reading and literacy modes. So, and then to think ahead about how can you pretend play with tools for scribbling in their primary writing modality. So that's where we can be spontaneous and play, but if we want to integrate the literacy, we have to plan ahead. So I just, when I'm planning ahead with pretend play, I have like familiar themes that I like to do pretend play around, which is the kitchen and doctor play. And so you just decide and have some things planned ahead of time, but then have that flexibility because the kids will want to change it up. So we're going to just take a little view of this video clip of Ethan when he was young. We were integrating literacy in terms of an object book. We call it a refreshable object book because we just used this Velcro book and had different objects around themes. So this is a transportation theme. And I just want to say, here's the dilemma for a lot of us in trying to bring the real world to our children, is we have to use sometimes representations. But if we do it in the idea of it's pretend play, we got to start someplace. We can't always use real things with our students. So I just want to emphasize that it's the beginning of concept development and introduction to the world around them. We've got to start someplace. So with Ethan here, who's blind, we have models of vehicles for transportation and just as a way to get them started. But you'll see how Heather is using it in terms of the ideas of pretend play around vehicles and the noises and things they make. So you'll see. I'm having a hard time.
Car. Okay. What's next? Helicopter. Helicopter. Oh, you want to open? Okay. What's next? Boat. Boat. You go in the water with the boat. Yeah. Boat. Boat, right. Boat. So it's a book. You want to start over? Or do you start over? Open the page. There we go. Vroom, vroom. Look what's vroom, vroom. Remember? Car. Yeah. Helicopter. Up. You want to open the pages?
After you guys are done, can I?
What's that? What's on the last page? You want the car? Skip pages. That's all right. That's you.
Yep. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So just a couple things. You'll see that Ethan does have some vision, so that's why he's moving close, because he's using his the vision that he has, and that's his older brother there playing alongside of him. So okay, Cal, thanks. So with pretend play and how we implement, it takes some creative examination to think about the how to accommodate. And so, you know, think about how would you accommodate participation of your students. So, you know, think back to like going on a bear hunt. I mean, you know, what about access? And what about alternative ways of communicating? And what would you do? And then playing doctor. And here's this photo of Lily. When I was there babysitting, she wanted to play doctor. And the first thing that she brought out to play doctor was the iPad that you see set up in the forefront of the photo. And then she brought the other more typical doctor play tools. But think about that scenario of how would you adapt what you see in this photo, and what alternative ways would you do to play doctor with your students? And what about going shopping? So that's another typical routine for me. And playing with children, I like having those grocery carts and shopping, and it's just an experience many kids have too. But how would you make that accessible? What kind of alternative tools and materials would you need to use?
So let's suggest to you that if you are watching this with, well, yourself, or you're watching this with the group, that this might be a good time to pause the video and talk about that. Talk about some scenarios and how you might do some adaptations. So if you've taken a moment or two to discuss off of the previous slide what you might do in those scenarios, we also want to add, excuse me, some examples of physical access during pretend play. So what to do with things like switch activated toys, making sure that you have physical access to and visual access to spaces. So for example, in this picture is a little preschooler using a switch to activate part of a little kitchen mixer. And what I try to make sure is that when children are using switch activated toys, that using the switch activated toy is not the end result, but we're using something that's activated by switches to do something else. So something that's a part of a bigger scenario. So she's making with the mixer, she's using the mixer to mix cookies, pretend cookies that are then going to go to a pretend bake sale. So it isn't just hit your switch and make the cookie mixer go. There's a whole story behind it. The other thing too that we find in pretend play is a big piece of it is taking everyday items and making them be something else. My husband always talks about how when his son was young, in the beginnings of Star Wars craze, that he would give him a salad mixer, a salad spinner, and he would put all of the little characters inside the salad spinner and spin them as they went off into the universe. And so that being creative and reinventing use of toys is a big part of play. So when you're doing things like switch access to toys, we want to make sure that it's interactive. It isn't just the solitary station that I so often see, as I roll my eyes, so often see kids like set up with a switch, hit the switch and something goes, hit the switch and something goes. And there's somebody on the side tallying the number of times. Like, what's that? You know, that all that is trial and error. It's not in the course of playing something. So, you know, if we have something like the penguin slide or a lot of those movable toys, what is that a part of? This second picture is from my classroom years ago. We had this great fireman climber, but he always climbed to get something. So there was always something up at the top of the ladder or something along the way that you had to stop and get pieces of something else that somebody was making. So that, you know, it's all about, you know, what am I using this switch to activate that's going to do something else? Many people have seen the scenario on the right where the switch activates the cow or the pig or the bunny, whatever the little thing that is made to move with the switch, knocks over something. So how often in our play do we build things up just to knock them down? And so you can be creative with kids having access to different components of the play. And making sure, we are here at AAC in the Cloud, making sure that we have communication during all of this dramatic play. So whether you're using low tech, high tech, no tech, how is that integrated within the scenario? Do you have different characters that they can pretend to be? Are you using your core vocabulary so that they have things to say throughout the play activities? So again, whether you're using AAC apps on tablets or high-tech devices, or even single switches. The picture at the bottom is from one of my middle school students. And when she is not just in play situations, but when she's in school situations, being able to interrupt, being able to ask for different things so that she is directing the supports that come to her throughout her different leisure and rec and work situations. And then, as I mentioned, whether it's low tech or high tech, Donna and I wanted to give you the whole range here of some examples from kids that might be using tactual representations to represent different songs or different pieces of play that they might be using. Looking at how people will adapt, and the example in the middle is from Lamp Words for Life, and how a fringe row was adapted for, this play scenario. And then other communication apps that might be built within. So like, for example, Patty King to Bonds, AAC to Go has lots of, which goes into the Go Talk Now app, has lots of examples of play vocabulary that you can use and infuse within situations. And lastly here, we'll talk a little bit more about implementation. Donna.
Yeah, here we go. So some considerations, and I just love the photo of a dad person, doing pretend tea with at a table. So one of the things when I want to implement, I look at spaces. Even when it has to do with reading, when it has to do with writing, and also with play. And I just want to add, I have been supporting a preschool once a week that occurs in my community. And I'm there usually as a substitute or supporting somebody else. But the play space that they have a little, kitchen area, the 1 unit kind of thing, but there's no table, little kid table. So I'm like really limited in my pretend play because there's not a table to eat at. I mean, we can make the food, make the coffee, pour the juice, cook the vegetables, but there's dishes, but there's no table. So I'm talking to them about, we've got to get some more stuff for me to play, pretend play. And what I just want to add with that space and stuff, there's always, the context of this preschool is there's always new kids coming from the community. And there are new kids coming who are maybe extremely shy, or there are new kids coming who have some spirited behavior. And one of the best ways for me to try and engage the kids, the parents are there the whole time, but is through the pretend play. And then I get them. Then I can get them. I can get them out of their shyness. I can get them out of their spirited behavior. And so really examining the space and then incorporating those routines, because then what I see when I start a pretend play routine, then when I see the child the next time, like in this preschool, they're doing the same routine we started, and it launches them into other play routines. So your role is to play. Your role is to be animated. Your role is to have fun. Your role is to communicate that this is a good way to be, and to really be creative about implementing that early literacy. You know, it doesn't always have to be just books, but if we think about reading, writing, listening, and communicating, and then when you see a child doing something really expanding on wherever skill they need to, you know, whatever, if they have a goal on their IEP, how can you expand through the play? So there are barriers to implementing pretend play because it doesn't look like work to others. So let's say you're itinerant person, you're itinerant teacher, itinerant staff. I was always itinerant. And so, you know, you're really focused on, I got to show up when it's reading, when it's writing, or show up at specific times. Because if I show up during recess and play, it doesn't look like I'm working on their goals and teaching. So it really is important to help your peers and supervisors move forward with you on the importance of pretend play for learning and literacy and so forth. And then learning and helping people value play as effective instruction. That instruction doesn't have to just be you sitting at a table with a child, or so that it looks like teaching. And then finding the time to play, because we are pressured to really do the teaching that looks like typical teaching, but to have the time to show up during recess, to free play time, and so forth. So really thinking through creating access in your schedule to show up at playtime, because then you can integrate other partners and peers into the play, which really helps with all kinds of engagement. And then integrating their primary learning mode. And you're always a role model to others when they see you do that, and integrating those materials, tools, and technology. And so also to think, moving from that incidental learning that so many kids do, that some of our kids who have special needs don't always do that incidental learning, but moving it to intentional learning. So then this photo is Lily and Max at a table. I really think tables are important because they set up this whole eating meal time. I want you to know, and they're, I don't know how old they are, but they're really young here. I did not set up this. They set it up themselves and engaged in it. So sometimes we have to be very intentional about the learning, because our kids with special needs always don't have these incidental learning opportunities and can create them the way Lily and Max did in this space. So really think about structuring and how you can create spaces that kids with special needs can do more incidental learning. Think about the furniture, the materials, tools, and technology they need to have available to manipulate, so they can act out their own pretend play scenarios and become independent.
And we want to set up this creative space idea so that, you know, because creative spaces foster creative minds. You see this in examples out and about the community. So taking advantage of different learning environments that are maybe outside of your home, outside of your classroom, and going to places that are in your community. So you'll see some examples from places that my granddaughter has gone on with various grandparents, where, you know, they can explore tools that might not be in a typical classroom. But it certainly is a whole play scenario happened on the right with us out at, you know, the sunflower farm that had all of these things that they could climb on, and stories about how they were riding the tractor and where were they going and taking the tractor to. And it had nothing to do with the sunflowers that we were looking at, but it had everything to do with the play story that they developed as we moved from one space to another. And then also that being creative with everyday items. And so, you know, whether we're on the rocking horse with the writing tablet, and I'm trying to remember what she told me she was doing with that writing tablet, but she's got a little witch's hat on. I think she was keeping track of where she was going. And I love the picture that we got off the internet of the second picture there, with all the use of the kitchen tools to be a part of the band. The picture in the middle are the things that Lola has taken from my mother's workout area and created a whole obstacle course that was going through the mountains and over the lake and on, you know, I forget what the big blue block was at the end. You know, pretending with Play-Doh. This is a child that really loves Play-Doh, except when she is at school, because Play-Doh at school is called a table time activity. I was looking at her schedule, and her preschool is very organized. It's wonderful. She's learning a lot. It's organized by every 15 minutes. And I was saying to her, well, what do you do during tabletop time? And she said, Play-Doh. And I thought, well, you love Play-Doh. You really, that's Play-Doh at the table. Oh, okay. Well, what else do you do? Blocks. And I think, well, you love playing with blocks. We create stalls for the My Little Ponies. Not at school. Blocks stay on the table. And so and I thought, oh my goodness, we have a colleague that talks about what are the things that we as teachers will unintentionally do that crush the souls of children. So yes, Play-Doh, blocks. And so I think we need to loosen up in many cases, so that, as Donna said, your role is to be the player, you can guide that, to be their partner along the way, to be the motivator, to be the expander. Hopefully, everybody, that you've spent your time here with us during this pre-conference session, and we thank AAC in the Cloud so much for doing things this way in multiple formats. But hopefully we've given you a new way at looking at play, that there's a new way of looking at things from multiple perspectives. And we wanted to make sure that you had a resource list from a lot of the content that we've pulled from and the research that Donna's gone through for us. And again, thank you to AAC in the Cloud. Donna, parting words?
No, just thank you. I like that last photo of a different perspective with Lola on the floor. You know, space, kids don't like being at tables a lot sometimes. So at any rate, thank you. We hope you have a great conference and get some benefit from this content for your students. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Donna and Kelly, thank you so much. What a great presentation with some really insightful pieces to share. So I'm really thankful for the things that you've brought to the table here and that you've shared. Those of you that are attending, thank you for viewing this session, and we hope we'll see you at the next session of AAC in the Cloud.